All right, so welcome everyone, and I am going to. So we're on class 3. So as you know, this is class 3, and then we won't have, because I was just speaking to Bay, and some of us maybe attended Chado Rimshi's teachings. He's going to still be teaching in the Bay Area, but more up in Berkeley, Richmond area. So I will be attending one of his classes because I missed everything. I'm in Santa Fe now, so I missed all the teaching so far. So when I get back next Monday, I'm planning to attend 2 or 3 events there. So unfortunately, we won't have a class next week, which you probably know anyway from the announcements, but just saying. And we'll have the last one on the 10th, and the practice day will be a couple of days before that,
Yes.
on the 8th.
Thank you very much. Because that's what I wanted to share, that the practice day will be on February 8th. And
Yes.
this is the last teaching module of the whole discovering curriculum. So we're co-hosting at Land of Medicine Buddha. So the day will be at Land of Medicine Buddha. And also partly because Ocean of Compassion's new space may not be ready. So
Yes, that's right. Stan, did you have a question?
Yes, it seems the practice day, there'll still be another class after the practice day.
Yes, yeah, but you'll still be qualified to come to the practice day. It's okay.
I hope so. Thank you for that.
I think the last class is more about, it's kind of just more going over vows and commitments and what happens in initiation. So it doesn't really impact what we're going to do on the practice day. The practice day is going to be like more meditation, because these classes are more about explaining Tantra, what Tantra is. So we're going to try and do that in the practice day, which will include a meditation on the death process, which some of you might have done before. That's part of tantric practice, very much part of it, meditating in the death process. And then we'll also do some other Kriya Tantra practice and which some of us may be familiar with, but just going through that. And there'll still be an opportunity to ask some questions that day as well. Someone else had their hand up? Madhuli?
Hi, Venerable Angie. I know
Hi.
you're doing a retreat at Vajrapani for
That's right.
Green Tara. Is that going to be an extension of this practice? And is it only going to be focused on Green Tara, or how is it? I'm just wondering, is there
So
going
yeah, the retreat will be on Green Tara practice. So it's really giving, whether you're new to Tantra, or also Gurmi Kenza Rimshi offered that initiation quite recently. So it was giving people the opportunity who did the initiation to really go deeper into the practice. But it's also for people who are kind of new to Tantra, and even without initiation you can come, so you're getting a feeling of what happens when you do. We're not going to accumulate, and I mentioned this in the last class, typically when you do a nearing retreat, a sort of more serious retreat in Tantra, you would complete 100,000, of a mantra, the mantra of that deity. So we're not going to do that during that retreat, but it's giving people an opportunity to see how you can use tantric practice in terms of Green Tara, how that influences your mind, and how it influences your understanding of the 3 principles of the path. So my idea is to use Tara meditation and also meditate on the 3 principles of the path, and how you can sort of blend them together, because that's what I've been talking about in this class. They need to support each other. Mm-hmm. We need to use both Sutra and Tantra together, and how do you do that in practice? How does it work, So we'll do it in the practice day, but we'll also do... it'll be 2.5 days to get the experience of like how you use Sutra and Tantra together, and just getting a feeling more in a situation where you can recite more mantras of the deity, do the sadhana, get familiar with the prayers and practices, and if you wanted to set up a small retreat on your own at home, how you would do that, how that would look after having done it at Vajrapani, Does that answer your question, Madhuli?
Yes, Venerable Angie,
So it
thank
will
you.
be very focused on meditation. It won't be like heavy on teachings. Don't know if heavy is the right word, but of course there will be time for question and answer, and I will talk a little bit, but we want to make sure that it's like more meditative. And of course Vajrapani is a wonderful place to get deeper into meditation practice, you know, so using that incredible environment for one to be able to go deeper into meditation. And it'll be mostly in silence. There'll be a little bit in the evening where we'll have dinner and discussion, you know. But the rest of the day will be in silence, so we allow people to go a little bit deeper into the practice.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So, of course, everybody's here welcome to come. Because you don't have to have had the initiation to do the retreat. There's slightly different ways. If you've had the initiation, there's slightly differences in how you can meditate, but still one is able to taste tantric practice here, you know. What does it do for your mind? Because we actually very much need that, you know. We need the purification methods of Tantra, which I'm going to go into more tonight when I talk about what Kriya Tantra does, because it's going to be a Kriya Tantra retreat. So we're going to talk a little bit more tonight the difference between Kriya Tantra and what we call Hajj Yoga Tantra. All right, so welcome everybody, Shira and a few other people, Hannah and Edgar, and who have also arrived. So we're going to start with just about 5-10 minutes of meditation and do the prayers just to set the mind for the class. So please just take a moment to get into your meditation position. Maybe a few deep breaths through the body, just to exhale stale energy, tired energy. And we can either sit for a moment and just do simple breathing, bringing the awareness to breath, tip of the nostrils, or if you want, you can do the 9-round breathing, which again kind of comes from tantric practice, using the winds and the airs to vitalise the mind. So either one, whatever's comfortable for you, let's do that for the next minute. And in that space, a little bit more clarity, perhaps, peacefulness, taking a moment to just bring to mind your motivation. So as we've discussed, you know, in the last couple of classes, tantric practice we only undertake on the basis of a firm foundation in sutra. Primarily, mainly the 3 principles of the path: renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom realizing emptiness. So as I mentioned last week, what that really means is, in a nutshell, is that we need to develop this determination, first this insight, first of all, that what really is the cause of all the problems, what we're plagued by, is self-grasping. You know, we're grasping at a view of self that doesn't exist at all the way it is appearing to the mind right now. We need to get very clear, some more and more clarity on that. That is the root, that is the plague. Not only us, but all beings are kind of plagued by that, all sentient beings. All beings who are still under the control of karma and delusion. So we need to get very, very clear that that's the root of our problem. So when we engage in Tantra, which is a quicker path, because it accesses more subtle states of consciousness, what we're really wanting to do is we see that we want to use the resultant path of Tantra, visualizing ourselves as a future Buddha, identifying with that, to overcome what Lama Yeshe says, this tyranny of ordinary appearance and ordinary grasping. So instead of continually identifying with ourselves in a more limited way, me, myself and I, we're trying to bring the result of our future enlightenment into the path right now. By visualizing ourselves, really trying to identify ourselves as being a deity right now, being a Buddha right now, chipping away at the wrong view of self, using the skillful techniques of Tantra based on an understanding of emptiness to overcome the delusions, We need a powerful antidote to these delusions. I mean, the sense of I feels very deep, very strong. But what the Buddha said, what the teachings say, that's completely mistaken. So tantric practice, accessing these subtle levels of consciousness that are much more powerful than our conceptual minds, becomes a very powerful antidote to delusions. An antidote that allows us to kind of step out of who we think we are now, wake up and identify with our most fundamental, clean, clear nature, which is empty. It's not nothingness, but actually emptiness is a fullness of the mind, a fullness of the experience of our wisdom nature. So we wake that up through the skillful techniques of Tantra, waking up that innate nature that we have and identifying with that in the appearance of the deity. Even in the beginning, the power of Tantra, mantra, visualization, it just starts to wake up this wisdom consciousness. So at least we start to feel and gain a confidence and a taste that we are more than we feel right now. We are more than we experience right now. Our consciousness, this ability to go way beyond who we identify with ourselves right now, this kind of small grasping mind of me, myself and I. So Tantra is dealing with overcoming ordinary appearance and ordinary grasping. Just hold that for a minute. That's what it's really doing in a nutshell. The more we do the praxis, the more we feel that these more subtle minds, they wake up, They're not, they have this power to kind of cut through the more conceptual mind. They're more powerful than the conceptual mind. It's not that we don't need concepts, but we need to also connect with these deeper levels of consciousness that bring out our Buddha nature, bring out our experience of emptiness, bring out our experience of bodhicitta in a much more direct and kind of faster way. So as also said, Tantra is very rare. It's not, especially at our level, usually Tantra is taught to higher bodhisattvas, beings are on higher levels, but somehow, right now, we have the merit and karma, even at our level, to hear, to be able to access and to be able to practice Tantra, to have gurus who can give empowerments, give explanations. So if we really hold on to that, so it's something very rare and precious to be able to engage in any level of tantric practice we can, because again, it's a powerful, more powerful, it can be very powerful antidote to delusions, self-grasping, self-cherishing, the root of our limitations. And so just to begin the class, feeling like that, feeling like how fortunate that Shakyamuni Buddha taught Tantra, how kind. As I say, not all the Buddhas teach Tantra, not because they don't love us or they're not kind, but there's no, the merit is to do with the prayers of that particular Buddha and the merit of the disciples. So again, we're so fortunate. Once we start to practice this and we see how it can sort of quicken up our path, deepen our understanding of the lam-rim, not just understanding, it's more our experience of the lam-rim. Then we get more inspired, and we feel this, we need to practice to feel the kindness of the Buddha. We need to feel like how his teachings have benefited our mind. So perhaps we can take a moment. When you take refuge, one of the ways to develop faith is just remembering the kindness of the Buddha, the kindness of our teachers, how it's impacted our mind so far in our life. And I think there's no doubt, the more we determine to study, reflect and meditate, can continue to benefit our mind, So imagining all beings around us, all seeking refuge together, again with the wish to kind of really uproot this wrong sense of self, This is the creator of our problem. Even though it's quite hard to see, we need to keep chipping away at that, because from the Buddha's perspective, all happiness and suffering comes from the mind, nowhere else. That's a big statement, it's a lot to digest. So we need to chip away at our understanding of that through listening and reflecting and meditating on the teaching, so it becomes our truth. Really deep and clear that, basically everything, our happiness, peace, suffering, it's all coming from the mind. Nowhere else. Even though it feels like that, it's all down at the state of mind. So we're going to recite twice in Tibetan, once in English, the refuge prayer. Sangye chodan soge chognam la janchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chen soge be sonange jola benjir sangye drubar sho sangye chodan soge chognam la janchu bardu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chen soge be sonamge jola benjir sangye drubar sho. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And we'll just recite a few Shakyamuni Buddha mantras. Dayada Om Mune Mune Maha Munaye Soha Tayada 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 Om Mune Mune Mahamunaye soha Tayada o mune mune Mahamunaye soha. Okay. All right, so so last week, as I mentioned in the meditation, I talked quite a little bit about this, how Tantra works with, the main, really it's like this powerful antidote to delusion, powerful antidote to the wrong view of self. So even in the sutra teachings, when we get to the wisdom of emptiness, what we're seeing here, what we're trying to really see is, the cause of all our problems comes with this wrong view of self. And what renunciation is really this developing this deep determination to want to rid ourselves of that. That's it, seeing clear that the cause of all our problems, I mean everything, birth, old age, sickness, death, everything comes from this long-term problem, beginningless time problem that's hard to wrap our mind around, of the wrong view self. Right? So when we have that, the more we have that motivation, the more we see that clearly. No, it's not from a place of beating ourselves up or something like it, but seeing clear like an alcoholic begins to see really clear that, continuing to drink or take drugs or something like that is not creating any happiness. They get very clear that it's creating a lot of suffering. Like that, the root of our problem is the wrong view of self. That's the main one, that everything stems out of. Holding on to this view of self that limits our view of self and is the creator of other delusions. Ignorance comes from ignorance, covering the mind, that covers the mind. And then that creates anger, attachment, like that. So that's, so if we go into the Tantra with some, the more we have an understanding of that, the more Tantra is going to work for us, Otherwise it's just deities and mantras and, it seems like, but we're not really using it to eliminate the delusions, That's what we're using it for. So that's what we need to, that's why we're working together with Sutra and Tantra, understanding Sutra more, what does renunciation, bodhicitta mean, emptiness, and then using the Tantric methods to deepen what is a very rich, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to always say, the lam-rim is extremely rich, when we develop these realizations. So we're simply using Tantra to develop lam-rim realizations, It's like, but we're using both, So are there any other differences in Tantra? I've kind of mentioned them in the beginning, but I just want to get a sense of where we are. What are some of the differences between Sutra and Tantra that I've mentioned over the last couple of weeks? Anyone want to be brave enough to put their hand up? And then we'll go into the material this week. Madhulika, yep, I saw you leaning forward there. Differences in Sutra and Tantra, yes?
I think I remember two things. One was Sutra is more generally available, like in general teachings that Shakyamuni Buddha provided to everyone, the general public, the general followers, whereas Tantra was only like it was very I suppose it was a more exclusive set of followers that I'm not sure if I'm stating this correctly, but it wasn't available to everyone at all points.
That's correct. Yeah, that's good. Very good, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the second point is that Sutra is for achieving bodhicitta over many lifetimes. I think you mentioned millions or billions of lifetimes, whereas
Yes.
Tantra is, when you combine Sutra and Tantra, you accelerate that timeline and you attain bodhicitta, hopefully, in much lesser lifetimes than just sutra.
Yeah, very good, Madalika. That's great. Joanne?
I understood also from your teachings that Tantra is more of a resultant path, whereas Sutra is a phenomenal causal path.
Yes.
Because it's resultant, practitioners actually start with the future result in mind,
Yep.
and do deity yoga.
Yes. Very good. Yeah. So what that means is we start by identifying with who we want to become from the beginning. Rather than thinking, I'm going to get there somehow, I'm going to create the causes and chip away and slowly, it's more like, okay, we try for the very beginning once we receive initiations, we start identifying with the future Buddha, the deity, the being that we want to become. So yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Joanne. Someone else had their hand up? Stan, yep.
I'm not sure if it was already mentioned in the comments so far, but my notes, I said Sutra tells what the problem is, and Tantra connects us with our Buddha nature. Maybe that's already been sort of.
No, that's good. That's one part of it, definitely. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So one is to identify the problem, and one is maybe they're both to resolve the problem, but one, as
Yes.
was said earlier, it takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
But it seems like maybe Sutra is more geared to understand exactly what the problem is, whereas Tantra is something beyond that.
Focusing more on the result we want to get to.
Right.
Yeah, the resultant path. Yeah, no, that's good though. Great, thank you. Dana?
I have down in my notes, Sutra is gross, Tantra is subtle.
Right. Any other understanding of what you mean by that? What's gross about it? Sounds a bit like Sutra's
big.
gross.
No, big, okay? Like, so
What do we
like
mean by gross?
the gross mind or the non-subtle mind, and Tantra being the more subtler approach.
Yes. So that means that, yes, basically, it's activating. So, yeah, when we meditate on sutra, of course we get into subtle states of consciousness, but we need to use our more conceptual minds, So we're using them to get more and more into deeper states of meditation. But as Tantra's doing, it can activate even subtler states of consciousness that I'm going to speak about more again in the next week or two, how that's happening. But yes, that's correct.
And the realization
Sutra
of emptiness,
it can only reach a certain level of subtlety consciousness, where Tantra's activating what we call the most subtle consciousness. So that's good, yeah. Anyone else want to share it? I think that's quite good though. So that's wonderful. You've got the main points, everybody. Very good. Between us all. So here we can see, Bae, sorry, did you want to mention something else? Another point?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that for a sutra, usually the practice of wisdom and method are separate, but Tantra is practiced together.
That's also very good, yeah. Thank you, Bae. Yeah. So that's what makes it more powerful, more quick, is because the special techniques of Tantra, you can usually just meditate on, in lam-rim you can meditate on bodhicitta, or you can meditate on wisdom realizing emptiness, but you can't meditate on them together with a one mind. Whereas the skill of Tantra is visualizing yourself as a deity, identifying with that. That skill means that within that method of meditation, you can you're meditating on the both method and wisdom at the same time. And again, we don't really understand that until we go into the practices, right? But that's a good point. Thank you, Bae. Ladan?
I'm not sure that maybe it's said before me, but I think Tantra is very rare as a method. Not everybody can reach it.
Yes, that's
Sutra
correct.
is more like general. Yeah.
Yeah, which we did mention that, but yeah, no, it's good that you bring it up anyway. it's not taught to it's taught to a smaller audience, simply because it requires a certain level of faith, faith in the guru, faith in the practices. We need a certain type of merit or fortune to be attracted to these practices. So that's why it's taught to a smaller audience. And there's other reasons for that we're going to go through, which you become more clear about when you actually practice Tantra, how it fits for some minds and not for others. Many people feel like, I don't have a connection with ritual. Many people come at the centres, what's all these statues and these rituals, but we get that. There's many people, they don't feel connected to that, So it's just the karmic, our karmic sort of capacity, ability, So it's not that we're like, oh wow, we're so special, we have a connection, but we're fortunate. I would say we're fortunate, But of course, if you don't do anything with it, then there's no fortune, But I would say that it's a certain type of fortune or merit. If you are attracted, but the main thing is one needs to practice it and know how to practice it. Otherwise, not much fortune, So yes, we have some merit. We're all coming to this class. Many of us are practicing it, but we have some attraction or we have some faith in it. But we also need to practice it to be able to utilise the skillful methods and get enlightened more quickly for other sentient beings. That's the whole. It's like really the whole premise is, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche would usually say. First of all, we want to realise emptiness, more quickly, and also. One of the main motivating factors as we move through Tantra, the different stages of Tantra, is recognising that other sentient beings are suffering as we get out our own suffering, as we get out of our own limited view self, recognising that others are wanting to quickly get enlightened for them. That's the bodhicitta, and that doesn't really become sincere until we really deeply move through our own stuff, and see how much we've been blinded by the wrong view self, how much we've been limited by that, how much it's carried us over life. So we need to get a deep, deep sense of that until some sincere bodhicitta opens, and that can come through more quickly through this combination of Sutra and Tantra. So I have this slide up here. Sorry, 1 second. Don't know why. Yeah, there you go. And it's just showing the point that from the Tantra, Sutra path, because I'm going to go into what we call the 4 purities. So I just want to show what we do from the Sutra path. How do we look at the body? How do we look at attachments? We look at these two verses here, from the Bodhisattva's way of life. If you do not delight in a sack of filth, though wrapped in silk and perfume, why delight in this body, a foul thing adorned with ornaments? So what's this doing? It's not to beat ourselves up and say we're so bad because we've got this body. It's like from a sense of trying to reduce attachment to the body, not just our own body, but maybe others. I think this is kind of, often from the view of monks. Of course, these were often written in the times. Shantideva actually, he was a monk at Nalanda monastery, but he was actually a secret yogic practitioner, so he would just eat and sleep and defecate, he said, The monks were like, what's he doing? He's not practicing, but actually he was a great meditator. And that's a whole other story, But he wrote the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. He composed it in deep states of meditation, but the other monks just thought he wasn't doing anything, he wasn't studying or anything, but he was this great master, So this is written in the context, I think, of to stop monks from getting attached to women, But we can apply it to ourselves because we get attached to our own body, we get attached to other bodies, So from the sutra approach, what we're trying to do is to, cut back the attachment, use verses like this. And also in terms of food, reduce our attachment to food, that, something that's just going to become excrement tomorrow. I mean, in some way you think, well, that's kind of funny or gross, but it's true. That's the thing about Buddhism. It's hard to say most of it's not true, It might not delight us in the moment, We might not feel like, oh, I really get, we might get a bit of an aversion, but actually it's the truth, So this is the sutra approach at looking at the body, looking at enjoyments, you know, which actually we still need to do this, of course, in the 3 principles of the path. We still need to work away at attachment. We're not saying we're not doing that. However, next slide. In Tantra, so because we're looking at the Tantra view more, I just wanted to mention that because we need to keep that in mind. That's still important. We still need to reduce attachment, because without attachment and without understanding the kind of harmy attachment in our mind, the harm of self-grasping and this wish, as I say, coming for the renunciation to overcome that, the 4 bodies doesn't kind of make sense, you know, or it wouldn't work. So from the tantric viewpoint, when we receive tantric initiation, this is how, you know, we try to view our body, you know, in a different way, not as a sack of filth, you know. But we're not talking here about our ordinary body. Yeah, we still have our ordinary gross body. But in Tantra, what we try to practice is what we call these 4 purities. So once we take an initiation, not without an initiation, but once we've taken a certain type of initiation, then we sort of take a commitment, you know, to try as much as possible to train our mind, as I say, to overcome ordinary appearances of how we view ourselves, our body, how we view the place, how we view our actions, and how we view our enjoyments. Because we're trying to be our future Buddha, the future deity of who we are. We're enlightened. So this is what we're doing in Tantra. We train, we try to... So some of us who have meditations already, we dissolve the deity and then we arise from the understanding of empty. Of course, this is also coming out as some understanding of empty, our empty nature, our Buddha nature. So we don't just say, oh, here's my gross body, but now it's all beautiful and light, you know. No, we actually dissolve the whole appearance of our ordinary body and we arise as a kind of deity body, a wisdom body. You know, the body, the deity, and we try to identify this is me, not this sack of filth, you know. This is me, you know. We're trying to create these imprints, impressions, psychologically challenge how we appear to ourselves right now. Challenging that. Because how we appear right now is also confused, mistaken. So we're trying to bring about a deep sense identification of who we are innately, who we can become innately by visualizing ourselves a pure body, the deity, the pure place. So seeing our environment like we see in the picture here, everything's pure and made of light, you know, everything's in the nature of emptiness, nothing's concrete and solid. Everything, you know, right now everything feels very concrete and solid for us. So we need to chip away at that. These 4 practices are chipping away at this concrete sense of self, phenomena, others, you know. So we're trying to just use these practices to create imprints, to realise that everything is eventually pure. Our actions will eventually be enlightened actions. Our enjoyments will eventually be pure enjoyments. Everything's in the nature of bliss and emptiness. How beautiful, you know. So there's a sort of delightful experience in everything we're doing, you know. There's a sort of blissful experience in everything we're doing. But again, this only comes from our bodhicitta and emptiness, you know. So some extent understanding of that when we meditate on our sadhanas and our practices. Madhulika? Good question.
Yeah, I think I understand what the first 3 purities are, but I'm having a little problem understanding the last one.
Enjoyments?
Yeah, what does that mean? Let's say I'm going to a amusement park and I'm going on a roller coaster ride and it's a really fun experience. How do I translate that experience into an experience of emptiness? Is it trying to say I am not the one that's actually experiencing that?
You're the deity experiencing that. You're Buddha Tara, you're medicine Buddha, you know. Your wisdom mind is experiencing that. Your bodhicitta is experiencing that. Your experience of the deity is experiencing that. Not me, myself, and I.
And I have
I
to
mean,
keep.
don't worry, you're not going to get it right away, but it's a good question, So and and also like the thing is, even at the start in this practice, sorry, Madalika, and then please finish. Even at the very start, when we bless our food, when we take refuge, if you have refuge commitments, just as a reminder, every time you drink food, you have a drink, you have food, you're supposed to bless it, yeah? What do we transform it into? Even in at refuge, we say transform it into nectar. Well, what's nectar? That's what we call a pure enjoyment for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Something that's not like our ordinary experience. We eat chocolate cake and then after one piece, we're already, we're not enjoying it as much. We're trying to imagine, trying to bring up about the experience that it's blissful what we're eating. It's in the nature of bliss, and it's increasing our understanding of emptiness. Sense objects, it increases our understanding of emptiness. Whatever we do, our environment, by looking at it, remembering its empty nature, it's increasing, imprinting our understanding of emptiness. Of course, this takes time. You have to have the initiations, we need to do the retreats, but this is what you kind of practice in when you're in more of like a retreat environment, trying to hold that kind of, it's like a divinity, a pride, an identification of your deeper nature, how it's going to manifest when you become a Buddha, trying to hold it now, because that's what Buddhas experience. But we do need the conditions of doing retreats, getting familiar with the deity. We do need all these conditions. We can't just do it right now. We're understanding the three principles of the path, or even if you get an initiation, it's difficult to just hold it now. We need the there's many things we need for that to become like you start to feel that, not just like you're really just on the level of imagination. Yeah, because right now it's on the level of imagination. And it feels like maybe I'm just like I'm acting this out, and it's not really real. And that would be true, But so yes, to do these four purities, we do need to engage in retreats, to kind of just hold that and maybe be in a blessed environment, so we can start to feel. The main thing these practices are doing again is it's trying to cut through our concrete concepts, right? And that's what they're doing. They're antidotes to the concrete concepts. But without, as I say, the environment retreat, some more guidance, we won't feel it just now. So I'm just kind of sharing, this is what we want to do when we're in more a retreat environment, For now, at least what we need to do when we get initiations is practice the mantra, try and visualize the deity, do the sadhana, and trying to get a feeling of, trying to get a little bit closer to the feeling of this practice, this deity, what's it doing for my mind, And then when we go into a retreat opportunity, you can practice this more, because the mind will be quiet, it's not out there distracted, So that's the kind of opportunity you get to do those, that kind of practice, then being able to hold these four purities a little bit more. But good question. Next slide. Okay, so, and I wanted to mention that last one, just in connection with how it's a difference again between Sutra and Tantra. We're focusing all the time on the problem in Sutra, whereas in Tantra we're trying to bring about the result right now in our mind through those four purities, yeah? Just showing that difference. So what Tantra is not, by understanding the floor classes of Tantra. The other thing I wanted to mention as well, sorry, as part of that slide, I just pulled up my notes again. Another way, after you've received initiation, another practice that's important is to see the body as a deity. I mentioned that before. Sound as mantra, not again as something concrete, solid. Sound has this kind of quality mantra. It's almost like it's teaching you something, At least it's reminding you of emptiness, And all your thoughts are the Dharmakaya. So again, everything, thoughts, Dharmakaya means like the ultimate truth. So all your thoughts are in the nature of emptiness. That's another way that we can practice and train a little bit when we've received tantric initiation. And again, it's cutting through the solidity of sound. Sometimes sounds can be quite annoying. So if we remember it there in the nature of mantra, our thoughts can feel very concrete and solid. So trying to get a feeling of they're coming out of the Dharmakaya, they're coming out of our wisdom realizing emptiness. They're not so solid and concrete. So that's another sort of way of training a little bit in Tantra we can use. It's quite important, that one as well, especially again when we get into the context of getting deeper into our tantric meditations or doing tantric retreats. Okay. The 4 classes of Tantra and misuse of Tantra. So I wanted to, because sometimes there's a misunderstanding about Tantra. So by going through these classes of Tantra, and the main 2 we're going to focus on, because the other 2 are very rarely practiced in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. I don't know much about them. I've never received initiations on the middle 2. The main ones that are practiced in this tradition and that we receive initiations in are Kriya Tantra, the lower Tantra, sometimes called Action Tantra. That's how it translates actually, it's Action Tantra. And Highest Yoga Tantra. So Kriya Tantra. So for example, those of us who took the Kriya Tantra initiation with Rinpoche, like Gyurme Khensa Rinpoche, some of us came to for that. That's a lower Tantra initiation. So what are we doing there? So mostly like Kriya Tantra practices are more like focused on outer method. One example of Kriya Tantra, Green Tara, Medicine Buddha, the Chenrizig, these are all what we call Kriya Tantra practices. And they're mostly, it's called Action Tantra because we're doing a lot of kind of ritual, cleanliness, keeping our body clean, eating clean. So part of Kriya Tantra practice, if you're doing a Kriya Tantra retreat, you wouldn't eat black foods like garlic and onion and meat, eggs. You would have a vegetarian diet, more like sort of almost like vegan diet, because you're keeping the body clean. The outside the body, you shower a lot, you clean a lot, you do a lot of ritual, making offerings and cleaning the altar. So the idea is to clean our mind, we keep our environment and our body clean. And there's ritual and ways to do that so that the mind gets... So it's very much a sort of outer method, that practice. Of course, we still do meditations, we still do mantras, but there's one particular Kriya Tantra practice called Nungne, abiding in fast. Some of us have done that. And that's very much about eating, it's all about not eating too, but one day, it's a 2-day practice, and we offer it at Vajrapani. First day, and it's in connection with the Buddha of compassion. So it's a very powerful method to develop compassion quickly. And we put out a beautiful altar, we make extensive water bowl offerings, we're asked to shower and clean regularly, we eat vegan food. And actually the second day you don't eat or drink at all because you're really doing a deep clean of the body to support the cleaning of the mind. So Kriya Tantra very much focuses on kind of outer method to purify the mind. And it's the easier one out of the 3. We usually start with that taking a Kriya Tantra initiation first. We'd also take that Bodhisattva vows. Because again, why do we practice Tantra? To achieve enlightenment more quickly for sentient beings. That's the only reason that you practice Tantra, with at least, we maybe don't have that motivation deep right now, but that's the main reason we want to build up that motivation through our practice of Sutra and Tantra, deepen that, and that's what these practices do, so it strengthens our devotion and bodhicitta. So if we already we take the Bodhisattva vows, because we're practicing Tantra to achieve enlightenment more quickly, and we need the vessel the container of the Bodhisattva vows. That's like the container that's going to hold the bodhicitta. Develop on that basis of that container, we're going to develop bodhicitta, the holding of the vows. Just like the holding of the pratimoksha vows develops our morality, the 5 lay vows. I have 36 vows. There's fully ordained monks have 250 vows. Fully ordained nuns have 350 vows, So that's the container for our practice of morality. That's our guideline. Similarly, the bodhisattva vows are our guidelines of how, if we hold them, then bodhicitta comes easy, So we need to take bodhisattva vows with the Kriya Tantra practice. I'll get to your question in a moment. Supports, and it also, what does Kriya Tantra do? It starts to develop a devotion in our bodhicitta, because we're starting to try to use, work with the deity. We've taken initiation for a lama. We need to start practicing, and I'm going to go into this a little bit more next week, the next time, the guru yoga, seeing the deity and the guru is inseparable, what that means. We need to start developing that at the level of Kriya Tantra. It can support concentration and our ethical purity. And definitely Kriya Tantra creates strong causes for our good future rebirth, purifying and collecting merit. And that's what we need to do to develop lam-rim. We need more purification, accumulation. So after this introduction to Tantra class, I think in March, we're doing few classes on like how we purify and collect merit a little bit more, what kind of practices we would look at to do that. Because that's also a factor. Really what we'll need here for our practice to be full in this tradition, we need the lam-rim, we need Tantra, and we need to do the preliminary practices, purifying and collecting merit. Those we need to get, all 3, And it sounds a lot, but I think all of us, we're getting a wee bit of handle on all that, Once we've got all those factors in there, then our practice can go quicker, faster. We feel more... We're developing faster, We're feeling the meditations, the lam-rim faster. But with Kriya Tantra, it's still slow. Still takes a long time, And it wouldn't be, again, we wouldn't be able to just achieve enlightenment through Kriya Tantra practice. It's a strong foundation for the other Tantras. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, what we really need to achieve full enlightenment. That's going to come, I think, the last class as well, because Bay brought up a really good point in, I think, the second class, but I want to build up to that point. So I want to share in my experience, then I'll take some questions. In my own experience, very early on, because I was in India as a new nun, and I was very enthusiastic, so I took a lot of initiations because I developed this is what I'm going to do for my life, So I had the time and the space, and there was many lamas, and of course His Holiness the Dalai Lama was giving these initiations, and it feels like, why wouldn't you go to that? And I'm so glad I did, But even though I took the High Yoga Tantra ones, I had the commitments to do them. I definitely felt like mostly what I needed to focus on was Kriya Tantra and the 3 principles of the path and the preliminary practices. I think in the beginning, those 3, because the High Yoga Tantra, again, it depends on our karma and merit for past life, but the High Yoga Tantra is more subtle, right? And it's a different method, and so it's like we need to we need preparation, we need to create a foundation of a lot in our purification, accumulation and merit, deep understanding of the lam-rim, I think, before we're really ready to engage fully in High Yoga Tantra. Now, I'm not saying we don't take an initiation of maybe a deity that we feel close to, but I think for many of us in the beginning, those 3 are where we need to focus, get a good sense of those. Then we can move in more kind of wholeheartedly, or get a feeling more of the High Yoga. It's more like we might not feel much from the High Yoga Tantra in the beginning. Again, it's very individual, but the other 3 are kind of mostly more important, to this strong foundation. Developing the inner causes for us to be able to practice High Yoga Tantra, that's what we're doing. But it's still very good not to wait too long if we're really sincere. And again, you can be guided by your teachers this way to take eventually to take tantric vows, because as we're going to see, they are essential for us, and we need the imprints for future lives at least, you know. So we're going to see how that's important as we move through more of the class. So any question? Anyone? So a couple of people had their hands up. Do you want to ask your question, Madhulika?
Yes, Angie, what is Yoga Tantra? Is that
Yeah, so yoga, these are like, yoga means union, you know. So basically, sorry, just to cover quickly, performance and Yoga Tantra just again use different methods. They go a little bit more subtle than the lower Tantra. They go a bit more deep, more subtle states of mind, but they don't have the skill of high Yoga Tantra, and they still don't have the ability to reach the most subtle state of mind. It's just, I haven't pulled up, like, to be honest, I haven't studied performance in Yoga Tantra because they're not practiced very commonly in the Tibetan tradition. So I didn't really want to go into any explanation of them. I didn't do any research myself because also we were short of time. But basically, you can practice all, you know, and some people might practice all of these, you know, probably the High Lamas do. But mainly they encourage us, we need the lower Tantra, and then from that basis we can move into high Yoga Tantra alongside the preliminary practices. But they're just more and more subtle and more different ways of, you know, just slightly different methods for, again, moving through our ordinary view self and our ordinary concepts, you know, our ordinary appearance, ordinary grasping. Just slightly different methods.
Yeah, I think when I looked at the word yoga, I was thinking about all the, you know, in the Indian yogis performing, you know, going through various body poses, and I couldn't help wondering if that's what it meant.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much to do with the body it is. I'm not really clear. I think it's different from Hindu Tantra.
Okay.
Though, yeah. Ladan?
Yes, thank you. I wanted to know because when you have like lower tantra, and you can do it with every teacher, and is it like more effective if you have already a classical, like a guru that give you this initiation and all the stuff, or you can do it like with even online sometimes or by yourself?
Yes,
and
you
then
can.
you find your guru.
Yeah, so look, Kriya Tantra, it's a good point, Ladan, just to be clear. Kriya Tantra one can do without initiation. Medicine Buddha, Tara, you can join in it, you can join meditations online, you know, unless the teacher says you can, you know, but mostly in FPMT, you can do Tara, Medicine Buddha, Chenrezig, and that's good because it gives the opportunity to see how you feel about the practice, you know, you feel a connection with that, you know. But eventually, if you want to be more serious and you want to make the practice more powerful, you're going to want to seek out a teacher who can offer the empowerment. But in the beginning, you can just practice without the empowerment.
Yeah, but it is not not your guru. I mean, the teacher might be every teacher that you ask them. I mean,
No,
does it create a relation of guru and student
Yes.
if you have
Yeah,
that?
so we're going to talk about this more in the last class, but if you
okay.
receive an initiation of Medicine Buddha, Tara, they become your guru. Yeah, they become a teacher, you know, you can't say... Yeah, that is definitely a relationship there, you know, for sure. Yeah. So then we'll talk that more in the last class, but yeah, at that point, yes, you enter into a relationship with that teacher, you know. So, and so another question? Does someone else have another question? Okay, we will move on. High Yoga Tantra. So, why higher tantra is emphasized? So again, it's not for everyone, but high Yoga Tantra It's much more inward. Lower Tantra, we're using like ritual and cleaning and the body and taking care of the body now, to keep a lot of cleanliness around us, to help support the cleaning of the mind. And this is probably more close to some of the Hindu tantras, the lower tantra, but Hindu probably have like types of higher yoga tantra as well. When you get into highest yoga tantra, we're trying to open up. It's a bit more focus on opening up what we call the subtle body and the winds and the channels. So we're using, we're really just focused much more inwardly on meditation at this point. What we're trying to do is waking up subtle levels of, in high yoga tantra, really the skill here is, so we have 3 levels of consciousness. We have gross consciousness, subtle consciousness, very subtle consciousness. Right? We have 3 of those. And at the level of high yoga tantra, we're trying to waken up the most subtle minded clear light. So the other 2 tantras, the Kriya Tantra, Sutra, can access the grosser consciousness and the subtle consciousness. But it's only high yoga tantra that can awaken this most subtle minded clear light. And that's the one that allows enlightenment to be achieved swiftly. Like the most subtle minded clear light is our most subtle consciousness that goes to life. That's the one that it's most subtle, so it's much easier to recognize the nature of that consciousness as empty, as emptiness, as ultimate nature. That's our ultimate nature. That's who we are. I mean, that's the most ancient part of us, because that's always been with us. We all talk about our ancestors and this and this. Well, this is our deepest ancestry, the most subtle minded clear light. And it's called clear light because that's its nature. It's luminous. It's clear. It doesn't have any stain of any attachment, no delusion at all whatsoever on there. But it's very, because we're so familiar identifying with the delusions, and they're so deep, the familiarity, it's very hard for us to access that clear light mind in our waking life, There's actually moments in an ordinary life when that kind of wakes up, becomes temporarily present with us, but it's so short that we don't recognize, and it's not a basis for us to be able to meditate on. But there's moments such as yawning, sneezing, orgasm, falling asleep, or the dying process, when we get, it's because the winds, you see this, as I say, we have a wind element and a mind. Wind and mind, like the horse and the rider, are always one. Like we have the breath, When the breath stops, we go into a deeper level of subtle consciousness in the dying time. But then there's still a deeper one than that, which we'll go through when we do the death process on the there's a more subtle one, and then there's a really subtle one. And when we go through the death process on the practice day, we'll go through those levels of consciousness, what happens. But, so again, there's these times, yawning, sneezing, orgasm, falling asleep, or the dying process. But most of us, it's so, you yawn, So what happens when we yawn or we sneeze is temporarily the winds withdraw into what we call our central channel, a deep part of our subtle body. But it's so quick, because the winds withdraw, then it wakes up this kind of a much more subtle mind, like almost the clear light mind. But it's so fast, because they go in and out so quick. When we sneeze, it's very fast. When we yawn, I think it's just at the tip of the yawn that there's a possibility that you could maybe see this clear light. It's the same with falling asleep. We tend to fall asleep, but we go dip into it so quickly and then go into a dream mind that we don't see it. Again, when you do dream yoga, that's what you're trying to maybe do, go into these subtle minds and utilize them, but you need to have a lot of concentration and awareness to do that. So we can't access them in these states, and we can't meditate on them. So we use tantric practices to try and going into what we'll call much more subtle body experience, to try and wake up to access this mind of clear light, because when that's accessed, then we can get a direct, a very deep perception of emptiness, and that's the basis of enlightenment. So when great lamas, when they pass away and they can meditate for days sometimes, that's what they're in. They're in that clear light mind because they've practiced in their life these methods. So when they come to the death time, they're very familiar. They can just go into that meditation, no problem. Because they've created a deep familiarity with that state of mind, and then they sit and they can achieve it. And many lamas achieve enlightenment in the death state, in the state of death, or in the bardo. Going from the death to the bardo. And again, that's we're not going to go in too much into that, but that's basically it's like for a high level practitioner, they're excited about death. Because they've been meditating all their life, getting very close to the clear light, but then they're going to access it at the death time. Because, it's not often the case that you can access the most subtle clear light. You can get very close to it, but it's often that it's only that they can really access at the death time. And again, there's reasons for that as well, but it depends on the practitioner. But certainly you can access it at the death time, but if you already know that, you're familiar with it, you're going to be able to meditate in that and achieve enlightenment there. So I wanted to also, is that making some way? I mean, it's a little bit hard to wrap our head around, but we're accessing the mind of clear light to you, and also developing what we call a level of bliss in more subtle states, because the very subtle states of mind are very blissful. So even when you achieve calm abiding, that's in the lam-rim, it says that you achieve mental and physical pliancy. So the body and mind get very pliant, very light, kind of blissful, But the bliss that you experience at the level of clear light is much, much more than that. Much higher than that, because it's, again, more subtle level of mind. So you use that experience as well. In Tantra, we're trying to use bliss, generate a sort of bliss to recognise, to realise emptiness. Very deep blissful states of mind to realise emptiness. So that's what we're doing in tantric practice. I can't go into too much detail because one needs initiation to go into really the details, But the main thing to hold is that it has this ability to go into, through tantric practice, to go into much more deeper, subtle levels of consciousness, which allow us to realise emptiness even more quickly, achieve enlightenment more quickly. Okay, so as I've just mentioned now, these three levels of consciousness, just if anyone wants to take notes, gross consciousness, ordinary waking and sense-based awareness, that's what we're doing every day. The subtle consciousness, that's when so this would be at the level of more like a calm abiding, when the gross consciousness are absorbed, and we can get deep levels of meditation. Can also be during the dream time. We can use dream consciousness to meditate, to think about the teachings, to receive instruction for your teachers, in those more subtle levels of consciousness. Sometimes we get some visions in there, or clear dreams, instructions in those more subtle states. Very subtle, clear light consciousness, that's the most innermost fundamental mind of what we call clear light, free of all gross thought and delusion, which tantric praxis aim to access and stabilize. So in High Yoga Tantra, there's what we call generation and completion stages, and they both have different purposes. So the one that acts in the completion one obviously is the higher stage, but first of all, if we took like a High Yoga Tantra initiation, we would practice the generation stage first, which again is, the main one is clear appearance, and getting a clear appearance of the deity and a pride, a deeper understanding emptiness. When that's stabilised, then we can go into these more subtle, what we call completion stage practices at the level of high Yoga Tantra. And that's when we're then able to access, ideally, much more subtle levels of consciousness to realise emptiness, to achieve enlightenment for sentient beings. So what I mentioned in my first slide here, I did sort of bring up the point. Sometimes I think even if some of us are reading Introduction to Tantra by Lama Yeshe, he talks a lot about transforming desire, you know. You know, sometimes this is, it said, you know, we can use Tantra to transform desire, you know, we can use that energy. And it's true, we have the image of the peacock here, because a peacock can eat poisonous plants or snakes without being harmed. So it's true, you know, when we get to like, you know, high Yoga Tantra practice, not the level of Kriya Tantra, but high Yoga Tantra, it's true that we can harness the energy of like maybe desire or anger, you know, to be able to use that as a way to get deeper levels of meditation. But it's, you know, one retreat, I just wanted to bring this up because sometimes, you know, there are times when you say, oh, weekend tantric retreat, or people might think that Tantra's all, when we see about, you know, Tantra's all about desire energy, or so that's wrong, you know. It's true that we, at a high level, you know, when you're at a higher level, when you're very deeply restrained by ethics, renunciation, bodhicitta, and you have a very correct view of emptiness, it's possible to use desire energy, you know. But again, it's at the level of high Yoga Tantra. It's usually more at the level of completion stage practice. And as Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, we were at a retreat. I was at a retreat with Rinpoche in 2019. And it was a high Yoga Tantra retreat. And one of the students asked Rinpoche, how can you transform desire? And everybody kind of went quiet, you know. And Rinpoche said, first of all, you need to abandon it. So what that means is, yes, it's possible to use desire energy, but the reason is not to increase sexual bliss or your experience with your partner. It's only utilised to deepen or to generate a special bliss that realises emptiness, and it's only used if you have you've already been through the 3 principles of the path, generation stage. And basically you would also need to have the instruction of your teacher, you know, if you were at that level to practice. So it's not that it can't be utilised, but one has to have control over it, complete control over it, to be able to bring up and utilise that energy in a way that's you're harnessing it to realise emptiness. I'll get your question in a moment, Kate. Because ultimately, even desire, anger, that energy is, you know, everything's in the nature. Even desire is in the nature of emptiness. Even anger, its ultimate nature is emptiness. But we have a deluded way of perceiving desire, of using that energy, you know, it's mixed with a sense of self. So it ends up harming us. We can't utilise desire energy, anger energy properly in its purest form. We don't see its empty nature. So it overwhelms us because we have a deluded view of self and we have a dualistic view working with it. So, and that's what Lama says in the book, you know, we can't utilise it because that's in control of us. And it causes us to create negative karma. So it's only when we have some really, at least abandoned desire, have a deep experience, you know, some clarity around emptiness, a deep clarity around emptiness, that we can utilise these energies at the sort of more higher level of practice. And again, it would need to be under the instruction of a spiritual teacher. So it's possible, but again, it's used at higher levels of practice. Because as much as we cling and grasp at that energy around a sense of self, then there's no way to be able to utilise that. It's a bit like giving a child, if you say to someone like us to use desire on the path, it's a bit like giving a child a chainsaw, you know. It's just going to cause yourself a lot more harm, you know. So I wanted to just bring up that because it is mentioned in Lama's book, but Rinpoche is very clear that it's only, you would only get that kind of practice at the level of getting instruction for your teacher at a time when you may or may not be ready for that, and that's at the level of the more completion stage praxis in high Yoga Tantra. Kate, you had a question?
Yes. In the transforming problems module, we're thinking about like maybe the things that cause us to suffer and using Lojong stuff to help us,
Yes.
the practices to help us transform. And
Yeah.
it's not the same, but that feels like transforming problems almost stops the action that I would do if I were to like act out of that frustration or anger or whatever, because I didn't get what I want or whatever. So in some ways that's like transforming the energy of anger or transforming the energy of depression, something. And I wondered, is it at all similar? I mean, it's a totally different thing because here we're transforming attachment or those types of energies. But is it similar in the sense that, like, well, I didn't yell at my neighbor.
Yes.
It's still there. So what am I going to do with it? I will think of them as my mother. They're my mother. They're my mother. So it's like I'm using the energy of anger to do a bodhicitta practice or something. I know it's not one-to-one equivalent, but I wonder if you talk about if there's a relationship or if that's a way of understanding this, what you're talking about on this slide or not. I don't know if that's true, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, it's a little bit different from because that's more sutra level. So transforming problems is almost using the problem to practice patience. Yeah. Oh, my neighbour's getting really angry with me. I can use that problem to practice patience. You're not really utilising the energy of anger. Yeah.
Well,
Does that make sense?
are there Tantra practices that do that they then take the energy of anger or take the energy of other
Yeah, so
things?
the difference with Tantra is that you do actually, there is again, you don't need to do this either. I'm just bringing up this point because sometimes you see these sex Tantra weekend workshop things, and that's not what this Tantra's about at all, So basically, to put it back to a nutshell is even the transforming problems, I mean, you're using that to reduce your anger and practice patience. If your neighbour gets angry with you, you're not using the energy of anger. You're trying to first of all, you need to pacify anger, pacify desire. You need to make sure you're in control of that. That's not controlling you. And at the level of sutra transforming problems, you're using problems to practice patience instead of getting angry. So you're not really using the energy of anger there. You've got an antidote to anger. You're remembering, but this is an opportunity to practice patience, and you're bringing forth some of the teachings you've heard about patience. And that practicing patience allows you to get more in control of your anger. Similarly with the sutra teachings, I've got a desire for this guy or do. Then you think about his body, his flesh, blood, and nothing much interesting under the skin, And then that helps to pacify desire. So at the level of sutra or lojong, we're pacifying these ones. We're not suppressing them. We're getting in control of them, right? But we're not also using them either. We're just trying to not allow them to control us. But at the level of Haisho, because again, I don't know, to be honest, I don't know a huge amount about it because this is, again, something you receive. It's not talked about. Even Lama talks about an introduction to Tantra, but it doesn't really go into the detail of what you're doing there, But he does touch on the fact that at a certain level, you can, once you have complete control over desire and anger, you can use that because its purest nature is emptiness. But you need to be able to control it, just like you need to manage a chainsaw before you use it. But if we're still angry easily, attached easily, there's no way. So we need sutra, and also the practice of the Kriya Tantra, generation stage, they pacify anger. They clean it out of the mind, they give us more. They open up our wisdom nature. They open up our ability to be able to recognise, when anger's coming up and not follow it. And at a higher level, maybe you're able to bring it up purposely and recognise its pure nature. There's also praxis, I think, in Dzogchen and other praxis that do utilise the delusions to be able to see their ultimate nature. But you can't do it until you're very controlled. You have a lot of control over them. And so it's really, we're talking about these more at the level of High Yoga Tantra. Madhulika?
This is a little less about. I was thinking about the chur practice, Angie, that Venerable
Yes.
we had discussed in a couple of classes ago, and I believe it's it's a tantra practice. But to kind of answer a little bit about Kate's question, just as what I've done as a very commoner beginner level chirp practice is transforming the afflictions like anger or attachment into kind of inner sort of demons, and then feeding those visualizations, kind of nectar, like your own ego is kind of feeding those visualizations. And so that is basically a way of transforming your inner energy, and then reducing the sense of self by feeding those energies your own body, in the sense, or your own self, which means you reduce your sense of self. And so that's kind of a transformation or energy transformation. At least that's how I internalized it. I don't know if that is right. I don't know if that is the way to do it, but I just follow the YouTube videos that I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, that's also, I mean, really, again, we're talking about High Yoga Tantra practices there. So transformation of using visualizations of, again, we're an understanding of emptiness and transforming everything into emptiness.
Yes.
Then we can try and see the ultimate nature of everything, all the delusions, they're ultimately empty. Our anger, our fear, our attachments. And so there are visualizations in Chu where you can do that as well. But again, generally in the Geluk tradition, you would be getting initiations for that before you do it, But I know there's things out there on the web, that you can do. But usually, certainly there's some level you can do that in Kriya Tantra. You can imagine when you purify your food and everything, all appearances, you're purifying everything into emptiness, so including your anger, including your attachment, your sense of self. That's what you're purifying into emptiness, all your stuff. When you dissolve into the deity, or when you arise as a deity, you're trying to come into that appearance of yourself the appearance of yourself as a deity arises from the understanding of emptiness. So yeah, I mean, Chud's it's a transformation of those energies, but one has to understand like emptiness to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we still need the Sutra Prath, because again, each of us have a little bit different disposition toward different practices, So I did feel a strong disposition towards Tantra as well. But you can start at Kriya Tantra by dissolving some of these, doing some of those kind of what you're talking about, I think initial meditations and dissolving everything into, nectar, or transforming all your delusions, imagining all that becomes like emptiness. But it's a slightly different approach for Sutra. I think from what Kate, when you transform problems, we're utilising the problem to become more patient, more kind. So I don't know if this is helping at all. Maybe I'm going round in circles here, but I'm just aware that there's only so much you can sort of talk about without having the initiations at the level of using desire energy, using anger. Generally we're using that more at the level of High Yoga Tantra initiations. But the key thing here is one has to have a level of control over them first. Otherwise, and an understanding of their empty nature. Otherwise, it can enhance the delusions. That's the key point I wanted to make. Okay, so as this slide says, so I think that's quite clear here in slide 26. Slide 27, next one. Yeah, again, this is just what I have been sort of trying to explain here as well. It's not that we can't do it, but we do have to have these three principles here so we understand how we are transforming and utilising these energies. Just as a recap, according to Lamazon Kappa, Sutra methods purify obscurations and gather to accumulations gradually. They do not deliberately access the very subtle clear light mind. Therefore, the realisation of emptiness occurs with coarser levels of consciousness. So I have mentioned this already, because it's only at the level of high Yoga Tantra with some skillful methods, which, as I said, can involve using the afflictions, desire and attachment, anger, can involve even using those at the level of high Yoga Tantra to generate deeper levels of emptiness, deeper understanding of emptiness. The other thing, in terms of just brought to mind, Madalika, when I asked Gyurme Khensa Rinpoche about what was the main purpose of the tube practice, he told me it was to reduce self-cherishing and self-grasping. That's the angle he took. He didn't so much focus on transformation, the desire, anger, that kind of. He just said that is the key point, and that's the key point for all these practices. We need to bring it back to that. The methods are one thing. We're focused a little bit more on the method here, which is one point. But again, I'm not going to go too much into the methods because it's just giving you a general idea of what we can access with Tantra practice, how it can benefit and supplement Sutra practice. But that, again, for Chu, that is the key point as well. It's reducing self-cherishing and self-grasping, which, again, even as you're saying, Kate, when we do the transforming problems, that's what the idea is. That's what we're doing there, with those to reduce self-cherishing and self-grasping. We're almost on, Joanne, I wanted to start on the four bodies because actually, and then I'll get your question, Joanne, because if I go back to this slide, the realisation of emptiness at the sutra level only occurs on grosser levels of consciousness. This kind of addresses something that Bay mentioned the week before about can we just get enlightened through the sutra path. So I want to talk about that a little bit more next week and go into the four bodies. We're going to start with the four bodies, what they are, because this is what we can only achieve, these special bodies of the Buddha. And I've touched upon them in the previous classes. Some of the classes even, I think we touched upon them in maybe one or two modules in DB already. But just going in a little bit more what they are, because it's only at the practice of high Yoga Tantra that we can achieve what we call the truth body and the form body, because they only arise on the basis of the most subtle mind of clear light. So that's what I want to talk about next week, as well as just going into initiation, especially at the level of high Yoga Tantra, the four types of initiation you get: retreat, Guru Yoga. Not next week, but in 2 weeks' time, we'll touch on those final points in the last class. But Joanne, did you have a question?
Yeah, and just the former slide, it says sutra methods can gather two accumulations. Can you define what that means?
Oh yes. Well, who knows what the two accumulations are? That was a question I wanted to ask.
Is it wisdom and emptiness? Or wisdom and compassion?
Yes, or wisdom and merit. But yeah, compassion's related to merit. So we need to accumulate merit, a certain merit or fortune to achieve, to develop bodhicitta, and wisdom as well, the fortune, the accumulation of wisdom. So we need these two paths, as we've mentioned. This is the speciality with Tantra, that you can practice wisdom and method together, whereas on the sutra path you can only meditate on one or the other, singly. You can't meditate them at the same time. But the special technique of Tantras, you can meditate on both at the same time, method and wisdom, so that allows you to achieve the two accumulations much more quickly. And it can be, if you keep your tantric vows. And, if you move into taking Hatha Yoga Tantra and you keep your Bodhisattva vows, tantric vows, and the commitments around that, there's a 6-session Guru Yoga commitment. If you're able to keep that well, you can achieve, I think I mentioned maybe in the last class, up to 16 lifetimes you can achieve enlightenment. Which, might sound like, well, that's still a long time, but we're looking at sutra over many, many, many lifetimes, so it's very short. And this is kind of this is the main speciality of Tantra, how, of course, for exceptional disciples, they may achieve enlightenment one lifetime, but what do we mean by one lifetime? I mean, they've probably been practicing for some lifetime, so this lifetime they get enlightened. I mean, even Milarepa, he had been practicing, he was a Geshe, he had been practicing for many lifetimes before. So he achieved enlightenment in that lifetime, but of course he had done some many lifetimes of practice. What was special and unique about Milarepa is he had killed over 30 people, and his determination to purify that karma was exceptional, his renunciation, his determination to achieve enlightenment. In light of all that, despite all that, was exceptional, because that's a lot of heavy karma to move in one life. That's why Guru Marpa was very strict with him, very severe, but because he needed to purify all that karma. So of course, it's possible we can achieve enlightenment with Hatha Yoga Tantra in one lifetime, but likely, if we meet Tantra, we take the tantric vows over a few lifetimes, that way we can achieve enlightenment, so that's also what's very special about it. And we can achieve, what we achieve in Tantra, is what I'm going to talk about next week, is what these bodies are, what they do, not so much for us, but for sentient beings, because the whole point is to get enlightened for sentient beings, and we need what we call the Rupakaya. We need these bodies to be able to benefit beings. So we'll go into next week what they are, and just the few final points on Guru Yoga, initiation, retreat, commitments, and But hopefully we'll see you maybe at the practice day if you can make it either in person or online would be great. Are there any more questions? Maybe I could do one more if you've got any question. Anyway, good questions tonight. Just checking. There's nothing in the chat in terms of a question, no. Yep. Just advertisements. Okay, so let's dedicate. And please keep up with the reading since there's a couple of weeks, and if you've got time, that'll be wonderful if you can keep up with the readings and the introduction to Tantra. And of course there'll be the opportunity after the classes to do the assessment, which I'm hoping some of you will do. Again, even if you it's just giving you an opportunity to go through the material again. It doesn't really matter how you do in the assessment. It's just allowing you to go through the material again and to allow it to sink in a little bit more, for us to get clearer on what Tantra does, how it benefits us, and to maybe get more inspired to maybe take an initiation or delve a little bit more into the tantric practices. All right, so let's just do a couple of dedications. Janju sencho rimbo she mage panam ge gyur she ge ba nyamba me ba yi gone gondu pelwar shug. May the precious view of emptiness not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. Since we're doing Tantra, may the precious realization of the two stages not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline but increase more and more. And for His Holiness to live 130, however many years. So I heard His Holiness again said recently that he's very hopeful that he will get back to Tibet this life. So how wonderful that would be, So for His Holiness to live long enough for the situation to change in Tibet, so His Holiness can return to Tibet. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Save of the land is no teachings on transmigratory beings who extensively clarify the path that unifies emptiness and compassion. To lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And let's just recite the last prayer, the last verse of for Rinpoche's swift return. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings, illusion of the three jewels, and the great ways of bodhicitta, the children, the victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Angie.
Thank you, Venerable
Thank you so
Angie.
much.
Thank you,
so
Bae.
much. See you
Good
in
night,
2
everyone.
weeks. Or see you maybe in 12 days or something if you're coming for the practice session.
Have a safe
Thank
trip
you.
back.
Thank
And again,
you,
please feel free to get in
Venerable.
touch with me if you have any questions you didn't want to ask in class. I'm always
Thank
available.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good questions, Madalika. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.